Thank you. Hi, welcome to this episode of Mysterious Forces Live. And of course, I have Kathleen Marden. She really needs no introduction to people who are into ufology. She's had many experiences of her own. She's written several books. She's collaborated with Stanton Friedman and traveled with him frequently when Stanton was working the ufology circuit. And of course, her aunt was Betty Hill of Betty and Barney Hill fame. And I just wanted to stop by Kathleen's booth today and talk to her about maybe some of the history of her career and her latest book and what the future looks like for Kathleen Marden. So Kathleen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you. And you asked the evolution of my career. Well, I was 13 when Betty and Barney had their experience, and that was the beginning of my interest in UFOs and contact. I grew up and I went to college, and although I had my own experiences, my family said, never tell anyone, because there are people who will try to destroy your life. You have a good future ahead of you. Don't talk about your experiences or those that were had by other members of the family. So I didn't talk for many years. I studied psychiatric social work, and then I went into education as a teacher, and then as an education services coordinator. And I was so interested in this field, UFOs and contact, that 30 years ago I left my field and I began my own investigation of my aunt and uncle's case that I did over about a 14-year period as I was writing the manuscript to the book. And then in 2005, I asked Stan Friedman to join me to write a couple of chapters in the book too. And this is the first book that we wrote together. We got along so well that we decided to write 2 more books together. Science Was Wrong and Fact, Fiction, and Flying Saucers. I'm particularly proud of this book because it's based upon years of archival research that Stanton and I did at physical archives. And I have to tell you that I found some really juicy information in the correspondence files of Philip Klass, Edward Condon, Dr. Donald Menzel, Robert Lowe, who was the project coordinator for the scientific study on UFOs that Edward Condon headed up. He was more or less a figurehead. It was Robert Lowe who did all of the work. And others also who had files, correspondence files at the American Philosophical Society in Philadelphia. And so all of that information is in this book, how they worked together to disinform the public. I have been the Mutual UFO Network's Director of Experiencer Research since 2011. We now have 30 people on the team who give support and an listening ear, non-judgmental listening ear to experiencers on a day-to-day basis. People can connect with my team members by going to MUFON.com and completing the Experiencer questionnaire. It's only 30 questions under the Experiencer page. And a member of the team will get in touch with you to give you support, to tell you names of hypnotherapists and psychotherapists and support groups if you're interested in something like that. I've also written a new book. It's right here. It is Extraterrestrial Contact, What to Do When You've Been Abducted. It is a book for experiencers who are trying to sort out what's going on. There's There are many chapters. I didn't write all of them. Madeline Tobias, who is a member of my team and a retired psychotherapist nurse who worked with veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder and also with people who had been in cults, wrote a chapter in the book. Ann Castle, who is a very gifted psychic who works with police departments to locate missing persons, who also began her career working in a psychiatric hospital and then moved on to IT, wrote a chapter about the stages that you go through as you are trying to sort out this and put it all together. I've written chapters on coping techniques, on some of the cases that I have worked on that were highly significant, different types of contact, because it's not all the same, folks. And also my own personal experiences on how to investigate your own case, what to look for, on social research studies and what they have found out about experiencers. If you want to make it stop, how you can do that. Denise Stoner has contributed to 2 chapters on the paranormal aspects of all of this. So, and I wrote part of those chapters, as did Ann Castle. And also, if you decide you want to go public, what you should know, what you should look for. If you're writing a book, where you should go with that. So the book is filled with ideas and workbooks so that you can put all of this together as well, plus recommended reading and recommended websites as well. So, and also, I'm associated with the Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation. I'm on the board of directors and a research associate. I've done worked on their 4,000 participant study, and also with Dr. Don C. Donderi on a MUFON study of 516 experiencers, a social research study. It's in the new book, part of it, and I speak about part of it as well, and it can be ordered from MUFON. So I've been very, very busy in this field. I'm also a hypnotherapist and a quantum healing hypnosis technique practitioner. So during my spare time, I have an office and I work with experiencers as well.
Okay. I'm wondering, growing up, I know for you, you had a lot of turmoil. Your family had turmoil because of the effects of the abduction experience. And I'm wondering if helping others has been cathartic for you, helping you work out, your own feelings and experiences.
Well, I have to say that I worked confidentially with Dr. James Harder, with Bud Hopkins, and with John Mack. So just knowing them was helpful. I had hypnosis with both Bud Hopkins and with James Harder. The difficult part was not being able to talk about it, having to hold it in. It's so important to be able to speak about what has happened to you. If you hold it in, if you suppress it, it can only cause illness. And we don't want people to suffer illness from this. So this is why MUFON has developed the experiencer research team, so that you can talk confidentially to someone who is a specialist who will give you help.
Yeah. Also, what has it been like being a woman in this field when there weren't a lot of women doing this kind of research and this kind of work early on? And you were working with some of the top people in this field. Did you encounter any kind of trouble or glass ceiling, or was the UFO community open to having a woman work shoulder to shoulder with these researchers?
I did work shoulder to shoulder with a lot of the male researchers, but I am scientific in my methodology, in my technique. I don't jump to erroneous conclusions. I come across as a well-grounded, rational person, And I think that that made a real difference. Also, they didn't know about my own experiences. I told Stanton Friedman, and at first it was in his gray basket until he finally realized that it was real. He had seen enough evidence to know that. But it wasn't something that I wanted to make public. And I finally decided just to go public in my late 60s and when I turned 70, because it was time, I thought. We had reached a better understanding that UFOs are real, that there is an extraordinary amount of evidence for that, and also for the government cover-up that Stanton and I wrote about in Fact Fiction and Flying Saucers. I believe that I am still respected among the male speakers, and the entire field has broadened. Now we have so many more people who are experiencers or who work with experiencers who have gone public, and also who are speaking at conferences. And those nasty disinformants who used to destroy people's lives earlier in my career are no longer there to do that. And I think that we've gained momentum. We've gained strength. We stand shoulder to shoulder. And if anyone tries to bother us, we are so strong and we don't really care. We know we're not going to answer those nasty people. We stand strong and refuse to reply to those who are seeking attention by destroying other people's lives.
No, I agree. I'm wondering if in doing this research and working with these experiencers, do you believe that there are multiple races of aliens who are abducting people?
I know there are multiple races of aliens who are abducting people or visiting people. It goes all along the spectrum, from very, very good, positive experiences to very, very negative experiences, mostly with interdimensionals from the astral realm, not so much from extraterrestrial visitors. And so I have worked with people at all along the scale, and one interesting case that I recently worked on was with a very important experience with 3 people. And one was a well-known abductee. The other 2 were highly scientific paranormal researchers who had an interest in attempting to record EVPs of extraterrestrials. And so they were out. It had rained earlier in the day, so all of the equipment was up off the ground. They were holding the equipment, trying to call in a craft. A craft did come in. It was flying erratically. It was up beside the moon as they were looking in the sky. But it came in closer and closer, flying erratically. The next thing they knew, they were swaying back and forth and nauseated. They're looking for the equipment they were holding, and it's on the ground behind them. They had a video camera running that whole time, and it did pick up 2 non-human entities on video before it shut down. I worked with one of these experiences. It was all investigated by the Mutual UFO Network and by myself. I worked with one of the experiencers, and even though it was traumatic, she discovered that these were human-type entities, only their eyes were larger than ours. They were much more advanced technologically and spiritually than humans. But they said that they had visited her through all lifetimes and through this lifetime. And the things that she thought were ghosts in her house when she was a child were actually them coming to visit. And she did have periods of missing time, which was very fascinating too. And I will be speaking more about this in the future and possibly writing more about it. I have in my new book, spoken about experiencer who has been healed. I have been healed by these non-humans as well, and as well as other people that I have worked with who have asked for healing. I have worked with people who have had experiences of the more negative time. So I always caution people, don't ask for non-humans to come in unless you've already had experiences, or unless you are in a CE5 group with people who have had positive contact. Because I've worked with individuals who have tried to call in entities who wanted to sit down and have a discussion with them, and they did not get what they were looking for. They ended up with negative attachments that they could not get rid of without the help of a shaman or a religious or spiritual person. So, so the book really runs the gamut from positive to negative and all along the spectrum to help anyone, regardless of the kind of contact experience they've had. Because you could have positive contact. If you don't remember it, you might think it was negative and be traumatized. So it's important to work through what the experience you've had.
Do you have an opinion on an alien quote-unquote agenda or what their purposes are? Of course, if there are different races of beings visiting the planet, they all might have a different purpose or mission that they're working on. What's your opinion on that?
Well, from the experiencers who took part in Freeze study and in MUFON study, we had open-ended questions to try to get those questions answered. What we discovered is that the ETs say that they are attempting to raise our spirituality, that we are primitive and we vibrate at a lower frequency than they do, and by raising our spirituality, we will have an easier life and we will go on to survival. They're also very concerned about our use of nuclear weapons, and they came here in great numbers when we started to explode or detonate nuclear weapons back in the 1940s. And have stayed around. They're also very concerned about an environmental collapse on this planet. Either naturally, I've learned that all of the planets in our solar system are warming up as we're going through this area of space, and that if you vibrate at a higher frequency, then your chances of survival are much greater than if you don't. You know, for many, many years, experiencers have been saying to me, I have this knowledge that's locked up inside of me, and I don't know what it is, but I have a feeling that someday it's going to be unlocked. And I think it's beginning to be unlocked, that people are beginning to understand the reasons for their contact, that we don't have all of the answers yet, that's for certain. But we know that many, many of them are very concerned about us. They're also, the hybrid program for many of them has been to upgrade the human genome so that it will make it easier for humans to vibrate at a higher frequency, to be more spiritual, to have the gifts that so many experiencers have. Because our studies have shown that experiencers become more psychic or intuitive. They have increased intelligence. They sometimes are able to heal people. They are empathic. They can sense people's emotions, can sense, some of them, the health of the human body. They become more spiritual. There are so many positive changes that experiencers go through. It's all in the book. And I think it's important. There are others who want to hold it down, who want to suppress us, who think that they own this planet and don't want the rest of us to elevate. But guess what? There are a lot of us who are more on the positive side than the negative side of all of this.
Do you think that the aliens themselves want disclosure, but the governments of the planet are the ones who are suppressing it?
Some of the groups of aliens have indicated that they would like disclosure, that they have attempted to meet with government officials over many years and have been denied. The government officials do not want to speak to them, do not want to heed their warnings. They say that it's also true of the heads of some businesses, and they say that this is the reason that they're starting from the ground up. And the more experiencers, the more humans who know about this agenda, the more the public will know, and that at some day we'll reach that tipping point where everyone will know. I'm aware of one experiencer who, of positive contact, his name is Kevin Briggs. He was a former police officer in the UK, a very credible man. He lives in the same town I live in, Florida now. A team of researchers and I studied him quietly for a couple of years. I'm now willing to say that I have worked with him. The non-human entities that he works with have shared a great deal of information with me and with my research team, and also have given us evidence that they are real. They've shown us craft. They have taught us to communicate telepathically with them while in deep trance state. We feel a strong vibrational frequency through our bodies, this tingling, strong tingling sensation. They have shown us craft that might be either under the water or invisible and hovering above the water. You will see like a 35-foot circle of turbulence. We've seen that. We've seen light orbs that have intelligence. There is so much evidence that they wanted to give to us. And this group says that they want to meet with the United Nations. They're trying to set up a meeting. It remains to be seen whether or not the United Nations will meet with them.
Do you think that the work of the TTSA is having an impact on disclosure?
I do think that it is having an impact on disclosure. A lot of people don't quite trust them. We know in the past that the government has come forward at least 3 times and said we're looking at this seriously, and in the end they retracted everything and they launched another cover-up. The lid slammed shut. They started debunking everything again because of hysteria among the population. This time, there doesn't seem to be hysteria so far. And I think that they will come forward and they will give us more information in their programs that they have on television and through the TTSA website. And they will continue as long as there is no public hysteria. They're doing this cautiously. They're doing it carefully. They're talking about the craft now. They're not talking about what's inside the craft. And if any mention is made, they want to say artificial intelligence. People like me know that although there is artificial intelligence on the craft, there are also sentient beings who have emotions, who are thinking beings. They're not just those who are doing the abducting and the collection of whatever.
You don't support the view that some of them are like cloned automatons?
I do support the idea that some of them are, yes. But those are the little ones, what some people call the bellhops, or those who come and take you, those who get you undressed and dress you sometimes in the wrong clothing. They're not as smart as the sentient beings on the craft. And it makes sense to me. Why would you want to have a huge staff of beings that have to eat, that have to have sleeping quarters, who have to use the bathroom, who have all of those things, including maybe medical problems, when you can have artificial intelligence in the form of these bio-robotic things that that have sort of the appearance of the others, but who just stand against the wall and don't move unless they're told to. It makes total sense to me as a logical person.
Yeah, absolutely. Switching gears a little bit, I'd like to touch on the personal, and I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how working with Stanton Friedman impacted your career, and maybe speak to what his loss is like, because I know that the whole community had an outpouring of affection for him and felt a great loss when he passed, and it was so unexpectedly. I was just wondering how that affected you.
Yeah, Stanton was a really wonderful person. He was never too busy to talk to someone who came to our table. He was a nuclear physicist. He was a genius. He brought so much to this field as the original civilian Roswell investigator, as the scientist who found other scientists to vet the work that the genius Marjorie Fish did to identify the stars on my aunt's Betty Hill star map. He was the one who took that information to the public and found the scientists who said that Marjorie's work was accurate. He was involved in MJ12 research, and he was also one who debunked those that he thought were lying. It was such a pleasure to work with Stanton. Our minds were very much alike, Stanton thought. We got along well together because we had the same thinking process. We worked well together at the table. We spoke together sometimes in front of an audience. We wrote books together, even though we were separated by well over 1,000 miles. We were able to do all of this very important work together. And I don't know if I would have visited the archival collections, such as at the Philadelphia American Philosophical Society, if it hadn't been for Stan. We visited several archival collections together, and it really expanded my knowledge as well. So I have to thank him for that. And my background is in social research. His was as a physical science in that end of the research. He was very much nuts and bolts. I moved beyond the nuts and bolts as I learned more and more about particularly the contact phenomenon. So, but Stanton sort of quietly came along with me and learned from me. It was sort of in his gray basket at first, but then he knew that I was working with scientists who were theoretical physicists, for example, with scientists who were social scientists in this research. And he had respect for that type of research as well. He called me before he died. We talked about once a week, twice a week on the phone. And he was going to go to Ohio to speak in front of an audience. And he said to me, "Kathy, I don't know if I'm going to be around much longer. There's something very wrong with me. I don't know what it is." And when somebody tells me that, they often pass. Not long after that, he took that trip to Ohio. I was waiting to hear back from him. I had a very bad feeling, as did my husband, that this was going to be the last time that Stanton ever spoke. He passed away in the airport, the Pearson Airport in Toronto, on his way home. It was such a great loss to me, even though I worked with him for so many years and I was so pleased to have done that. But just, we were such good friends that I miss him. And this is the first conference that I've worked at without my husband with me or my son with me to help out. The first time I've been alone at a conference where Stanton was supposed to be with me. So sometimes I get a little weepy, I think, just because he's not here. But I hope that he's here in spirit.
Absolutely. So this is obviously the 2019 International UFO Congress here in Phoenix. It's the first year that it's downtown. It's in a different venue. I enjoyed the Weekapaw resort where the convention had been held before, but obviously this convention has outgrown that size facility, and they just simply needed more rooms. And so you're here doing this. What do you have booked for the rest of the year, and where can people expect to meet you and find you at other conventions?
Yes, well, we're winding down because fall is approaching. So I've spoken many times during the spring and summer. I have a UFO cruise coming up at the first week in October. You can find out about that by going to my website at kathleen-marden.com or just going to ufocruise.com. It's leaving from San Diego on October 6th, and it's going to the Mexican Riviera. I'll be there with several other researchers. And then in Florida in November, there's going to be a UFO conference and a one-day conference in Orlando. And that information is on my website as well, so that you can make contact with the promoter of that conference. And then I'll be speaking fairly locally. I live in Florida to some other groups, but I'll wind down for the year at that point.
For people who might be watching in the future, the hurricane is going on. Is your home safe? Is everything okay down there?
Well, I was actually worried about that. My husband and my son were holding down the fort. I spoke up in New Hampshire last week, so I was supposed to fly home to Florida and then fly from Florida to here. But the Orlando International Airport was closed down, so I was able to fly from New Hampshire to Arizona. And fortunately, the hurricane has devastated the Bahamas, and it is now skirting up the coast of Florida toward the Carolinas and Georgia. So I worry about those people who are directly in the path of the hurricane, because Florida is a peninsula that goes up kind of straight, and then the Georgia and the Carolinas kind of jut out from there. So they're directly in the path. The hurricane, if it moves away from the coast, can gain speed. So I just pray for those people. We're going to have high tides and some winds in Florida. This morning I heard winds up to 60 miles per hour, but that's certainly a heck of a lot better than the 200 miles per hour that people in the Bahamas had to face.
Absolutely. And I just want to say one more time, the new book is Extraterrestrial Contact, What to Do When You've Been Abducted. It's by Kathleen Marden. This is what it looks like, and where can people find the book?
The book is available on Amazon and at Barnes & Noble. It's available in hard copy or in as an ebook. You can also order autographed copies from my website at kathleen-marden, MARDEN.com.
Kathleen, you're a legend in ufology, and your work with experiencers is admirable. And I just want to thank you personally for everything that you've done, for the people that you work with, and for your research and your years of dedication, and actually sticking to the scientific method as well, and not abandoning that as you go through this research with these personal experiences, because as we know, the science sometimes can stand up against these subjective experiences.
Absolutely.
Where there is no quantifiable evidence of someone's experience, yet all the time it's real.
We collect evidence, and we teach people how to collect their own evidence, and it's very important, because as I work with people over many, many years, they have many experiences. They know what to look for. They are documenting what has happened. And some of them have photographic evidence. They have marks on their bodies. They have fluorescence. They even have witnesses. So it is a long patient process, but it's important.
All right. Thank you, Kathleen Marden. You're a total sweetheart, and you're a gem of the UFO community, and I look forward to hearing your work for years to come.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And this is another episode of Mysterious Forces Live. Don't forget to like and subscribe below, and catch us next time on Mysterious Forces Live. We're at the 2019 International UFO Congress right here in Phoenix, Arizona. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Okay,
Thank you
great.
so much. Thank you for your time.